Welcome to the Practical Enneagram. Steve Beckett is a music and record label entrepreneur who was called by personal tragedy into the world of Ken Wilber and developmental theory. He trained as an integral coach with Integral Coaching Canada in 2010 and now spends most of his time either coaching leaders in businesses and non-profits or teaching and facilitating for ICC. When I went through ICC's training, Steve was my teacher. I don't think I'll ever forget being in this gorgeous room with him in Amsterdam, me and 17 or so others, whilst he elegantly delivered the components that now constitute my coaching practice. The integral method is fantastically complex, about as complex as humans. Steve made it clear. I still have no idea how he does that, but it's very inspiring. In terms of the Enneagram, and like many guests on this podcast, Steve is a student of the Diamond approach. In this interview, he talks with me about that, as well as how he relates to the Enneagram, and also shares some of the most impactful and important practices he has made use of over the years to support his development. Steve is a 5. I hope that you enjoy. How are you, Steve? What have you been up to?
Today?
No, generally, like last few weeks.
Oh, I've been full on since Boxing Day, basically, because we did this big integral calling our circle event. So I helped design and facilitate that. And then I taught 2 professional modules and then a master certification. And then we just did into a European conference as well. So yeah, it's been full on. This is about the first week I've had where I've not been on Zoom.
And now I've dragged you in on a Friday evening. I'll talk about
this is the only call I'm doing. I've been out in the garden all day. Good topic to geek out on. I haven't spoke about the Enneagram specifically for ages, apart from when I'm teaching it.
Yeah. What's it been like to teach online?
It's like anything. It's got pros and cons. I mean, the great thing about it is all the classes are full with big waiting lists. And I think, just that combo of being in COVID, and it was an opportunity for people. And also, we had people from just every part of the world, really. So it's
amazing.
They don't have to do the traveling and staying in hotels and all that kind of thing. So it's been great in that sense. And I do miss the being in the physical space with people. And I think, that's the main thing that the students miss, the social interactions and going for lunches and dinners and all those cool things that you got to experience.
It's funny because I would have been happy doing it online, actually. Of course, I got to do it in person, and that was lovely. I love to travel, but I guess the preservation part of me kind of likes being at home and cozy when I'm doing the trainings as well. So I can definitely see pros and cons.
Yeah, I think people appreciate that as well. Yeah. I'm noticing with coaching as well with clients. I think clients actually prefer being coached on Zoom because then in their own safe space, they don't have to travel to and from any meeting. And yeah, I think they really like it. I think the only thing is psychologically when you're this close, we're looking at each other on a Zoom call now. There's, I think they've just done some studies where it's as if people are just invading your personal space constantly. So I think it does something to the nervous system to have that much what feels like really close contact for so long, I think. But I'm noticing more and more coaches, I'm doing it myself a bit more, turning the video off. I feel more embodied and kind of sense my way through the conversation instead of it all being kind of head and visual oriented. So a lot of people are starting to do it.
That's interesting. I can't imagine that because I suppose I rely a lot on the physical cues, probably too much, actually, the facial cues. Yeah, it would be interesting to do.
Yeah, try it.
So I want us to attempt to give people a clue on what it is to coach, teach, and generally do life from a type 5 perspective, because I think that will be insightful both for anyone who coaches 5s and for 5s themselves. So my first question, can you talk to me about the journey from record label entrepreneur to integral coaching teacher and facilitator? And if you can, try to link that to your patterns as a 5.
Oh, straight into the deep. Well, my journey was explicitly while I was doing my training, like one of my topics was how can I, move from something that I've built for nearly 30 years and didn't want to destroy by leaving it, but also there was these, new kind of aspects of what was really lighting me up, which I would call kind of more matters of the heart sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I knew that I wanted to go deeper into those kind of developmental arena But at the same time, I built this business that I was super proud of, and people working for me, and artists working with us as well. So I didn't want to destroy that. So my big question was, how can I do that? But just to backtrack a bit, I think the kind of before and after moment for all that, I think I've told you when I was teaching, was the death of my business partner, Rob. Mm-hmm. You know, we'd been together in the company for about 12 years before I got diagnosed with cancer, and then about 6 months later passed away. And that was my wake up call, really. You know, before that, I'd just been obsessed with music and culture and things like that, but not really into anything developmental or spiritual. Or all these people had given me books and poetry. You know, my sister gave me this poetry of David White. My friend Amanda gave me Ken Wilber, Brief History of Everything, and just devoured that, and it just lit me up, that book. And I knew that I wanted to be involved, you know, just explore these different dimensions more deeply, really. So I think that's maybe the piece of the 5, is this kind of explorer, just wanting to know everything. I literally just want to know everything. And I think that reading that book, it suddenly opened up this whole new area of reality that I'd barely touched on, really. So it was suddenly, there was this kind of impulse to move into that arena, and then gradually over the years, I got more and more involved in Integral, and then got trained in Integral coaching, and then became a teacher as well. So that while I was in my training, my kind of topic in that training was, how can I transition from leading the company to becoming a coach.
And what was that like? I imagine that was a journey of itself.
Oh, it took years, you know. Yeah. It's like the hardest part is getting the right people in place, both that were going to lead the company, and also, if you think about it, with music and film, you know, it's a lot of it's about aesthetic. So I think that 4-wing of mine really came into play, because I've just got such an eye and ear for, in my view, what's got the depth and what hasn't, and that's. That it literally can just feel like if it's a molecule out, it's off for me. So I just got this kind of attunement to, in my view, what was the kind of cutting edge, deep music, and I track that down. That was the hardest. You can, you know, bring people on with these other skills, but you can't really train people in your own taste. You've got to stand back and go, okay, now I'm putting somebody else in place that's got good taste, but it's not my taste. So you have to kind of button it if there's something that they're signing that you wouldn't sign, and trust that you put the right people in place, basically.
That sounds like a task, a tall order for someone who's used to making all those decisions themselves, I guess. What point did you encounter the Enneagram, Steve, and what happened when you did?
I think it was probably in the Integral coaching training. As you know, you have pre-work and before the course, and identify your own Enneagram type, and kind of get to know your own type before you start trying to work with other people's types. And I was super skeptical. I was like, what's this nonsense? Enneagram is just a, you know, tarot meets horoscope. I did the tests. I think all of them came out as 5. And so I then deliberately read other types, convinced that I'd relate to them. And then I'd know, oh yeah, it's nonsense. They're all, you know, like with a horoscope, you're going to meet a tall, handsome stranger and you're going to travel. So I read other types, and it's like, no, not really. No, I'm not digging this. And then finally I read my own type. I was like, oh my God. Person's inside my body. How the hell have they got this detail? You know, that's what's so incredible about the Enneagram, the detail that it can go into in these structures that you're convinced they're completely original, and you think you're the only person in the world that's experiencing the world like you are, and then suddenly the veil drops and you realize there's millions of you having the same experience.
I can hear the 4 perspective in the way you're describing that. That is like the rub of realizing you're like everyone else. It's your sexual 5s. So it's pitched as the counter type because there's a tension between the instinct and the passion. Or did that mean when you first encountered the 5 descriptions, was it a bit like, not all of this fits?
Well, I think with any of the lenses, I think that's the danger with them, thinking you're supposed to swallow it hook, line and sinker. But I mean, definitely with a sexual subtype, it definitely identified with it, because I've also got that intensity. And especially one-on-one relationships, I'll just get super intense. Like I have a few friendships, but the ones that I have just go super, super, super deep. Get really intense and kind of talk for hours and hours and hours about nature of reality and all this kind of geeky. But then I will just do my disappearing thing and just be completely off the radar for weeks or months kind of thing. But in terms of the question about identifying with all the pieces, I can't remember which pieces I don't identify with, but really at the end of the day, the way I hold Enneagram and any lens that I'm working with is, if we're working with a client, it's a way of getting more intimate with what their unique way is, rather than putting them in a box. It's also a way of me getting out of my own box as best as I can, so I can objectively, as much as possible, meet the client. And then from the Enneagram perspective, working with it personally, really at the end of the day, deeper, in my view, more valuable, and its initial use is more as a spiritual tool. So really, it's not identifying what you are; it's identifying what you're not. So it's really giving you specifics on what I would call, from Diamond approach perspective, like really specific object relations, or in other words, really specific kind of mini lenses that you're looking through. So the more you can get familiar with those reifications, the more you can disidentify from them and experience your true nature or your essence, or who I really am or who you really are. That's its most profound value, I think. I can understand why it's been used in psychology and then in coaching, because it is a useful tool to get a sense of people's psychology. But that's not the depth of it, as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's like anything, people get lost in it and then they think that is the person and they are a type 2 and they are a type 5 or whatever, whereas I always hold it as like your pure awareness or being, experiencing reality through type 5 lens.
Yeah, very much how I hold it as well. Just so perfectly put as well. I mean, I've been on a journey with this of holding it completely as a psychological developmental map to now something different, and really questioning even using it in coaching at all from the perspective of informing a developmental journey. It's all still an unfoldment. I think you spoke to this question a little bit already, but in our method, we hold the Enneagram as one of 6 lenses in client development, potentially providing growth direction. How do you use it, if at all, now in your personal work?
The Enneagram?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm noticing is that the subtler and subtler dimensions opens up. So at first it can be more, these what I call them specific kind of object relations, or these specific psychological ego structures that you can disidentify from and experience more freedom and space from an interior perspective. But then there's almost getting to the more fundamental aspects of the Enneagram, which is it feels almost like getting into the kind of operating system rather than the apps, so to speak. Recently, I've been working more with just fear as a structure itself. So rather than experiencing fear as something that's from a psychological perspective, I've got to work, getting under that and directly experiencing the energy of fear and being with that, and it can, all these different emotions can transmute into different, I would call them aspects of presence or essence.
Yeah, and fear becomes some sort of presence and clarity, right? Is that what it becomes, transmuted?
Well, it can come, the big part of it is dynamic aliveness. So it's got a real dynamic, rhythmic energy to it and a very awake state kind of thing. So if you take away the so-called reason why there's fear there, then it can just be an aspect of presence that's really valuable to experience and to be able to be with.
Okay, I'm going to double click on the Diamond approach stuff in a minute, because I'd like to hear about when this became your main spiritual practice and why it is your main spiritual practice. But how do you think Fivesness sources you in your work as a teacher and a coach, and in what ways does Fivesness generate contraction in both those roles?
I mean, they've all got their different ways in, haven't they? But I think for a teacher to be an Enneagram 5, especially in the kind of geeky methodology that we're in, is in Integral, it's a Five's dream, because you can just keep reading and reading and reading and learning all the information there is out there. I remember I was training to teach. I just had to go like literally as far as I could on any aspect to just imagine any question that could possibly be asked, because the thought of being asked the question that I didn't know was just like, no, completely terrified me. And I think the other thing, I think, it brings the 5 in, is I've got an ability to really, I've got a lot of precision. So when I'm coaching, I'm really precise in the way that I coach. And then when I'm teaching, one of my gifts is to be able to disseminate pretty complex aspects of a methodology and get them in really simple, basic language, which I get feedback over and over again. That's something that people really appreciate. I've also got a lightness and a like not getting too drawn into the depths, even though I'm navigating the depths at the same time. So there's that, and then I think the closes down is probably the just the classic one of being a bit. I've really had to work on not being distant and being approachable, and especially when I'm in a physical classroom, it's a bit harder on Zoom. But just making sure I'm constantly like moving forward, and because I don't need that interpersonal contact. So my tendency is just in a break, I'll take space. My type does need space, but at the same time, noticing, I'm having to be proactive to make sure that I'm reaching out to people, especially the more withdrawn types, the 9s and the 5s, 4s sometimes. So I'll make a conscious effort. I literally like track it, that I'm making sure that I'm pinging with everyone, so that they're all feeling they've got that one-on-one time with me. So I think, it can come over as aloofness kind of thing, when really it's taking space and also giving space. Like I'm very, people notice it, that I'm very at ease with just letting people have their own journey. Because you can imagine when you're teaching, people are just going through these emotional journeys through the whole time you're teaching. So I'll always be there for people, but at the same time, I trust that they've got the wisdom to move through it themselves. So I would say they would be the main thing.
To all of that, I'm not hearing about this aloofness because I didn't experience it from you. Yeah, I can imagine as a 5 that might happen. Yeah. So can we talk about Diamond Approach? When did you encounter that? Was it at the same time as you got into Integral?
Oh no, it's way later. It's probably about 10 years ago. What did I do? My spiritual journey. I got into Vipassana.
Oh yeah.
And then after that, I was involved in a kind of interpersonal we-space spiritual practice called Waking Down in Mutuality. We'd just like literally be in a group for hour after hour, sometimes 5 days, just terrible. Processing and like shadow work. It's a 5's nightmare in a way, but it was really profound for me, because it really taught me to kind of stay in that interpersonal space and in groups as well. But eventually, like all good spiritual groups, the teachers kind of fell out with each other, and it split into two tribes. And then my friend was involved in Diamond Approach and Almas's book. So I think, he's a 5 as well, but just the 5s. The precision in his writings for me is there's nobody else like it. Is the way he kind of discriminates with such precision into all these different dimensions of reality is just incredible. So I probably got involved with it about 10 years ago.
I agree. It's incredible. It can be dense, his books. I'm attempting to read Facets of Unity at the moment, and I have to read and read again, and it's more draining for me. I think this other thing that I celebrate about 5s is it's not draining to be in that mental space the whole time as well. I mean,
yeah, a few people say that. My wife's a 2, and she's the same. She cannot. But I mean, there's some of his books like Unfolding Now. And what's that, Love?
Are they easy? Are they more accessible?
Yeah, a lot more accessible. Love Unveiled. That's really good as well.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll give that one a bash as well.
Yeah, I geek out on the dense ones as well.
Oh my God, what is that?
Pearl Beyond Price. That's
Oh
so
yeah,
dense.
I really would love
Classic
to.
5. I'll go through. I'll even go through the bits at the back and cross-reference. That's the 5 at work.
That is a
I'll
beautiful.
go in the bibliography and then track down the books in the bibliography. It's hilarious.
So I can totally see why that as a path resonated with you because of the precision and
yeah.
So it's still something that you still feel as sort of compelled by it as a spiritual path.
Yeah, because it just keeps unfolding and it's got so many different dimensions to it. And that's in a way it's one of my criticisms of Wilbur with his books, that you read them and it's like, how many times are you going to talk about quadrants, levels, line states and types? Whereas Almas, there's just it's like different people. He's literally just coming from a completely different perspective with each book. And then once you're actually in the teachings are just so deep and so many different dimensions to them. So it keep unfolding and unfolding. So that's why I love it.
Do you bring in some of those sort of inquiry techniques that they use into your coaching practice or not?
Really, if you want to sum up Diamond approach, it's being with what is in the moment, which sounds simple, but the depth that they go into that, especially with the Sufi Latifs, where you're actually, it just feels, he calls it space cruiser inquiry, but it feels like you've just got this kind of superpower in when you're inquiring into your own experience, and that definitely shows up now in my coaching. So, without being too woo-woo, when I'm coaching, I just sit down and I feel like I've got these allies of the Latif, which is all these different aspects of presence who are supporting me in the coaching sessions. It's incredible the way it's supported me, to be honest. There's just no pressure. It's the whole thing's just there as soon as I sit down.
I don't know how to talk about this, but I'm going to try. So awakened perspective for a 5. So we got on the flip side of the fixation of stinginess, which we know is a energetic sort of stinginess. It's not like the stinginess that is more widely understood in that word. On the flip side of that is what Almas calls omniscience or transparency. So how do you experience transparency, Steve?
It's like it is like transparency. It's like there's like a luminosity or a kind of we call it living daylight in Ridwan. There's this kind of subtle light starts shining through everything and having a sense of the oneness. So it's a sense of it's beyond a knowing. It's a direct experience, really, of, I would call it totality of being, kind of pressing through everything, including myself. That's the closest I can get, and not non-woo-woo explanation of it.
Yeah. Was there, some teachers hold this as something, we're always on that spectrum between the fixation and the sort of holy idea. And is that your experience, or is there like a defining moment when you remember experiencing that non-dual perspective?
Well, I think it's always a spectrum, but that's why I like the word realization rather than awakening, kind of thing. I think that does, with a lot of these different experiences, you can have these state experiences, but there's something about that comes with the knowledge or the understanding of it that kind of clicks something in the soul. And I think once that happens for these different realizations, even though you might not be in that state all the time. I mean, why would you want to be in any state all the time? You can't forget it in a way. So it's like that. I think the best analogy is that, when they talk about enlightenment, when you've got I'm definitely not saying I'm enlightened. The snake, you think you're sitting in a dark room with a snake in the corner. Have you heard that one? And then turn the light on and you realize it's just a coiled rope. And then the light goes off again. And every now and then you might go, oh, it's a snake. But you just, there's a certain knowing at that point. Oh no, I remember. It's just a rope. So I think it's that kind of thing where you can have these state experiences where you do genuinely forget them. But then and this is why I love the Ridwan Diamond approach method, is there's an understanding that needs to happen for that to become a kind of realization, and especially an understanding from your own direct, unique soul's unfolding. So once that's clicked, then for these different aspects, then can't really forget in my experience.
Makes sense. Yeah. Switching gears again, what have been useful practices for you as a 5, as a teacher, as a coach?
Oh my God!
I know that's massive.
How long have you got?
Okay, let me narrow this down a little bit then.
No, I can narrow it down. Let me think. Well, body work's a massive one for me.
Yes, talk to me about that, please.
Discovering this thing below my head
Well, that thing
was a revelation for me. So I didn't even used to look people in the eye. I didn't even realize that people did look people in the eye. Honestly, I swear to God, I did some workshop and we'd had to, do that classic gazing at each other thing. And it's like, so even things like, that's how big the journey's been for me. People can't believe it when I teach. I used to be like a piece of wood. First training I ever went in to take, not to deliver. I was literally vomiting at the thought of even standing up and saying my name, kind of.
Really? Yeah.
So I think I've literally just done it bit by bit by bit. So it's amazing actually thinking of my journey, because I thought, I'm not really good with the body. I don't really know how to touch people. Okay, I'm going to put myself through 3-year shiatsu training at British School of Shiatsu. So by the end of that, I did that. By the end of that, I'm just totally comfortable with every single aspect of the human body and rolling them around.
Oh my God.
And then I wanted to explore more energetic things. So I went to London School of Energy Healing for about 2 years, which was amazing. But sometimes you'd be sitting there in this room, everybody dressed in purple, like channeling angels. I'm like, what am I doing here? And then loads of body work, just, gym the whole time, dancing, movement, loads of receiving body work. So I did super intense stuff like holotropic breath work, rolfing, where they go inside your mouth and inside your nose and all this kind of thing. It's hardcore.
I didn't know that happened in rolfing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they get every little piece of armoring in your body.
Wow.
And then what else did I do? Grinberg method.
What is that?
Yeah, it's another form of kind of deep body work. Voice dialogue. Helen Sidra Stone stuff, shamanic work. I just did everything, honestly, Rose. But what I did do is I followed the thread. It's like, what am I interested in now? Okay, I'm going to do this, and threw myself into it. What is it now? I'm going to do that. Now I want to do relational stuff. Did the whole waking down stuff.
That was something you said to us actually on the last day of PCM, and I absolutely acted on it, Steve, because you said just go deeper into the things that you feel the most drawn by.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. The body work, obviously, that's got to be important for every single 5, right? Doing something. Yeah.
And breath work as well. That was I think starting to breathe, especially in the belly, and bringing with my meditation practice, it's nearly all belly now, and that's been amazing. Just starting to experience the world more from a sensing perspective rather than a thinking perspective. So like when I'm coaching, it's literally like my whole sessions feels like it's from the belly. But yeah, if I'm working with 5s or teaching 5s, I'm always getting them to focus on body work and breath work. And 5s like intensity. They just don't like to be kind of seen in the intensity, I think. I think a lot of people think 5s are withdrawn or numb, but it's actually the opposite. It's like they're so sensitized that it's almost overwhelming for them. So a big piece of it is being able to be with that in intensity, which has probably been easy for me as a sexual 5. But I think for all 5s to be able to, ground in the body, be in the belly, be in the legs, feel the earth, and be more and more feel and be with more intense emotions. A lot of anger work as well. I did loads of men's work.
Yeah,
everything I could get my hands on.
And definitely serves by your sexual instinct there, I would imagine, Steve, because I just think there's less fear about going into all this stuff than maybe with a self-pres 5.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did have the fear, but I do this more and more, that I really did that whole, I remember reading that book years ago, that feel the fear and do it anyway. It's like, yes, that's what I'm going to do. So I've been throwing myself into these things, especially public speaking and things like that, just literally thinking about them for 2 weeks before. But then you get through them and it does something that it's just such a confidence builder to put yourself in these situations and feel the fear and then come out the other side, kind of thing.
Yeah, it is. What you said about 5s being intense is interesting, and I agree that people don't generally probably know that about 5s. Have we got is there any other like 5 myths that you feel like bashing or not? Like anything that people are a bit too simplistic about around fives?
Well, I think this whole thing that we don't, that what's the Enneagram Rhapsody?
What?
Have you seen that?
I saw it a while ago.
When it's talking about the 5 leaving the party early kind of thing. It's like, are you kidding me? I'd always be like one of the last people at a party kind of thing.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But then I would just disappear, I'd disappear without even telling people. It's like, where's Steve? I'm just gone kind of thing. But yeah, there's myths in all the
types. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. Anything I haven't asked you about Enneagram being a 5? Anything else you feel like saying?
Well, I think the only other thing from a coaching perspective is I have found with the way that we use it with, because I know some ways that use the Enneagram don't really acknowledge these integration moves. But I find those integration moves and the way that it feeds into supporting us for identifying specific developmental muscles really useful. So for me, 5 to the 8 position, and it becomes more choiceful.
Yeah.
So I'm not naturally an 8, but when it's useful, because I'm not as identified with the 5 position, I can move into these 8 positions. Obviously when I'm teaching, I'm more in that taking up physical space and feeling that energy in my body and disrupting the space a bit. I think that's what I love about the Enneagram. That's very dynamic, and people. That's another thing that seems to have been lost. It's not a fixed thing. It's a dynamic movement, and then if you were plotting it, it's like, oh, this person tends to be taking a 5 perspective in the day-to-day life, but you can definitely take an 8 position, and you've got your wings. We've all got aspects of all the types. So I think because it's so complex, it's like another dimension of complexity to put some of these movements in there. But I think the movements are really, really what adds these kind of deeper, juicier layers of the Enneagram. And I think apart from the teachers in it, a lot of people don't really seem to acknowledge those movements.
We do in the method. That is one of the sort of facets of the Enneagram to use in working with a client, is to look at where they perhaps make a conscious move to the integration point.
Because we're always doing it in the context of a specific topic, so it's just giving us some clues about what might be specific developmental capabilities to build. But we're always going to be making the final call on it, whether it serves that individual client in the context of a specific topic. Same with the levels. It's not like, I think that was one of the shadows of Integral, where there is constant like push for higher. It's like what are you going to do when you get there? Was we just use the levels more as a languaging lens to meet the client wherever they are and see out through their eyes rather than trying to get anybody anywhere.
Yeah. There's so much that I appreciate about our method. The more I meet other coaches exposed to different methods, even like other integral methods, there's so much nuance in ours that is just, I think, so on point. Can you tell me about how you experienced the move to 7?
Oh, that's when I get completely overwhelmed and scattered. That's a disintegration move. So I'm just kind of frenetically running around trying to, the big one's not attending to self-care. So like the body work will drop off, maybe start drinking more, not dropping my connections to my relationships. It's just the general sense of it is scattered and overwhelmed, and just frenetically trying to bring everything together. But I'm just taking on more and more and more instead of stepping back a bit and putting some boundaries up and saying no.
Okay, I'm going to say thank you again for taking the time to talk about this stuff with me.
Oh, thanks, Ross. It's been a blast.
Good.
I'm used to doing all the interviewing, so it's nice being interviewed.
I've been listening to some of your interviews with Joanne and Laura.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there's another one coming in those.
Is there?
My next interviewee is Andy Hunn, founder of Life-Centered Therapy. He is going to be talking to me about the energetic components to the type patterns. Very fascinating stuff. Don't forget to subscribe and do rate the podcast. It will help other people to find it.